Hello there! Today I thought I would talk you through some of the oldest books on my TBR because I see people talking about books that have been on their TBR for, I don't know, 2-3 years and saying that that's a long time. 2 years or 3 years for me is kind of the standard time that I read the books that I have bought. I generally wait about 2 years. You know, I still consider the books that I bought 2 years ago to be fairly new in the grand scheme of my bookcase. I have some books on my bookshelf that have been there for so long, I'm frankly embarrassed about it. So of course, because I'm embarrassed about it, I'm making a video to tell you about the ones that have been on my shelf for longest. I can't guarantee, well, one of these is definitely the book that has been on my shelf for the longest. I can't guarantee that these are the oldest books on my shelf, but I've picked out 5 that have been on my shelf for so long that they're kind of not even on my radar anymore, and I think that's when you really know that a book has been hanging around for far longer than it should have been. So let's get straight into it with the one that I'm honestly most ashamed of, and that is Kissing the Rain by Kevin Brooks. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This book was published in 2005 and I bought it in 2005. There we go, it's out there. This book has been on my TBR for 14 years. I'm not even joking. So when I was younger, we didn't really have YA as such. This video is so going to show my age, but we didn't really have YA. What we did have were a few select authors that wrote for a teen audience. So Kevin Brooks was one of them. There was another man called Melvin Burgess, and there was a woman called Mallory Blackman. A lot of these are probably still writing books. I know Mallory Blackman is. I haven't heard anything about Melvin Burgess for a while, and I haven't heard anything about Kevin Brooks for a long time. But Kevin Brooks was one of my favourites. He wrote a book called Lucas, which, if you can get hold of it, I really would recommend. It's a really beautiful book. So on the back of reading that as a teenager, I bought this, and this is one of those books that I started so much that I can tell you exactly what happens at the start of this book, and then I think when I was younger, I was really quite bad at sticking with a book. I would endlessly pick up books, put them down, pick up other books, and this was one of those books that just kept getting put down, which is crazy. I don't do that now. I read one book at a time, and it frankly hurts me to think of picking up a book and not finishing it, but that's what I always used to do, especially if I went to the library or bought new books and something was more exciting, I'd pick those up instead. Anyway, poor Kissing the Rain kept getting put back, and now it's 14 years later and I still haven't read it. I've kept it because, as I say, Kevin Brooks is a really fantastic author, and this is a book which interests me. I believe it focuses on a boy who witnesses a murder or a crime of some sort, and it looks at what he does with that information. One day I will pick this up, and when I do, I will let you know about it. Yeah, 14 years. Eat that on your TBR lists. Right, then I have got books that have kind of jumped way into the future, sort of 10 years later, and we have got The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides, which I have had, I'd say 10 years later. It's probably been on my TBR for about 6 years. This is a book that I bought because it's Jeffrey Eugenides, and obviously he wrote The Virgin Suicides. I've also had, for around the same time, Middlesex by him. However, that's behind somewhere on my shelves, so I didn't want to pick that out, but I could have used either of these as examples. I think I've had both of them for around 6 years now. The problem is not so much with Middlesex. Middlesex, I think the issue is mainly that it's such a thick book, so it's quite daunting, and I know it's a sort of saga of somebody's whole life and their family and that kind of, I don't know, it makes it difficult for me to pick up. But this I haven't picked up because I think of all of Eugenides' books, this is the one that gets the hardest reputation. I don't think it's loved that much, and I kind of picked it up because of who the author is without any real intention of reading it, which is probably why it's still on my TBR today. I believe this is a kind of romance, obviously, because it's called The Marriage Plot. Perhaps a bit of a riff off of Jane Austen type stuff is what I'm thinking this is going to be. I will read it. I'll probably read Middlesex first and then get to this one at some stage. Then I have got The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. I have had this again for about 5 years. I picked it up in a charity shop because I recognise the name, honestly. But since then I've realised that I think this is something of a philosophical look at love and infidelity, etc, etc, and I've kind of got it in my head that it's going to be really difficult, which is stupid because I've done that thing where I assume that it's going to be a difficult read before I have even picked it up, which is just crazy, and I will probably really enjoy it. However, because I've got it in my head that it's a difficult read, I just, every time I come to pick a book, I do not pick this one. Hopefully soon, maybe when I have a long time to concentrate on a book, I might pick it up. I hope so. Anyway, I have kind of hopeful feelings about it. I'm really hoping that it's going to end up being a book that I really enjoy. And I have got A Widow for 1 year, which again I've had now for about 6 years. This is by John Irving. Now John Irving is an author who I really enjoy, to the point where if I see one of his books in a charity shop or secondhand, I will buy it, which is what happened with this one. However, John Irving's books are also quite thick, and I don't know, it's just another one of those that kind of gets put off. I think it's a book that I know I'm going to enjoy because I always enjoy John Irving's writing, and I think he crafts really fantastic worlds and characters. So it's kind of been one of those books that I've not been in any rush to get to because I know that I like him. However, one day it's going to need to get read. I mean, it's been a long time. I'm hoping that the talking about these books here is going to push me into reading them in the not so distant future. And then finally, we've got another one which has been on my shelf for about 6 years. There seems to be a theme, but I think around 6 years ago was when I discovered BookTube, and so I was buying a lot of my books around that time, so a whole load of my books. I mean, there are so many more that have been on my shelves for around 6 years, but let's just stick to 5, shall we? So the next one is Of Human Bondage by W. Somerset Maugham. This is predominantly, it's because it's thick, honestly. I think I bought this book kind of because it's one of those books that everybody's read. I don't know, like I kind of bought it without fully having any real intention of reading it. I don't know what it's about. It's just one of those big name classics that I felt like I should own. But since buying it, I've actually read, I think it was The Painted Veil by Maugham, and I kind of didn't love it. I mean, it was fine, it was average, but it really left me a bit lackluster. Luckily, that book was only around 200 pages, so it wasn't that much of a commitment. This, however, comes in at a whopping 700 pages. So, you know, if I don't like this, that's 700 pages of commitment that I have to make. I do find as well that big books tend to fall below my radar a lot, especially on BookTube, because I want to give wrap-ups and have interesting things to talk to you about. Big books, especially now I'm not reading as much as I perhaps once did, big books do definitely fall by the wayside a lot more. I've still got Les Miserables and War and Peace on my shelf, and both of them, I couldn't tell you when I'm going to read them. They've been on my shelf for about 4 years. I've also got Crime and Punishment, which I want to read, but it's big. Anyway, this is not me talking about all the big books that I want to read. But yes, so there are some of the books that have been on my TBR shelf for a lot longer than I would like to admit. Let me know down below what book has been on your TBR the longest, and if it beats my 14-year record. And I will see you next time. Bye!